Hello, I'm Ray Spearing. Some time ago I gave you a report on Daniel 8 prophecy concerning the New World Order. A lot of people from all over the world have asked me to give that again with a little bit more detail, so here we are. Now, as you know, I'm not a rabbi, I'm not a pastor, and I don't belong to any synagogue or church. But I'm looking at this and I realize that a lot of the pastors who teach you and a lot of the rabbis who teach you, they teach you what they were taught by a previous pastor or rabbi. So let's have a fresh look at it and come with me in the Bible. If you got one, get it off the bookshelf, have a look with me and see what you think after you have seen what I'm going to show you. Now we're talking about Daniel prophecy, which was written approximately 2,500 years ago. And it's a story about a war between a goat and a ram. Now, as you would realize, there's certain animals are symbolically representing certain nations. For example, if I were to ask you what animal represents Great Britain, you would say the lion. If I asked you what animal represents Russia, then you'd know it's the bear. And if I say what animal represents USA, well, you know that to be the eagle. And if I asked you what animal represents Australia, you know that to be the kangaroo. Now, in this story, we have a goat pair, and it says in the Bible that it's representing Greece. Well, now we know that it doesn't represent Greece because when we checked up the word there for Greece, the word there is Yavan, Y-A-V-A-N. And we found out through a little bit more research that that is representing the progeny that came out of Noah, which is Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Yavan is a progeny, and it'll tell you in both the history books and the Bible that Yavan represents the Gentile nations. Now let's read a little bit to tell you what happened in this prophecy, and you come with me and get an understanding yourself. And you do not need to belong to a church or belong to a Jewish fraternity to understand the words that are written here. What it says in verse 19, the angel is speaking to Daniel in the prophecy. I am going to tell you what will happen later in the time of wrath, because the vision concerns, and get the meaning of the word here, the vision concerns the appointed time of the end, the last days. Now, if we go on the traditional understanding, you'd have to say that 321 BC with Alexander the Great was the time of the end. Well, you've got to have a real good imagination to stretch that far back. It goes on in verse 20 to say, the two-horned ram that you saw represents the kings of Media and Persia. Well, Media and Persia back then, Darius or Cyrus was defeated by Alexander the Great. But that's 321 BC. We know that the words Media and Persia today represent Iraq and Iran. Now it says in verse 21, the goat is the king of Greece. Well, that is incorrect, as I've just explained to you. That word is Yavan, and that represents the Gentile nations. And if I was to ask you who represents the Gentile nation today, well, you know that it is NATO. It's UN, United Nations. And the notable horn, it says, between the eyes of that goat pair is the first king. Well, tradition will tell you that that was Alexander the Great again. But I'll tell you something, that's even an error, because the first king of Greece was Philip III, not Alexander the Great. Then it goes on to say that that notable horn was broken and it was replaced by 4 more horns. So let's go further and come with me and have a look at this, and you read it with me. Now in verse 22, when it says that the 4 horns replaced that broken horn, it also says that they represent 4 kingdoms, which we have nominated to be the 4 unions, that will emerge from his nation, but will not have the same power. Now, if you have 4 presidents, 4 kingdoms, 4 prime ministers rising up again, dividing up the world into 4 divisions, as they have done for the 4 unions, but not having the same power, in other words, they've got power but not their own power, then who is telling them what to do? Obviously, you can now realize it's NATO, UN, and it's the banking cartel. They've got total control over these 4 unions, over these 4 people. But realize something else. In verse 26, it goes on to say that this vision concerns the distant future, the time of the end. Now, obviously, if it represents the time of the end, the last days, that's not the four generals that they say, represented by the four horns, coming out of Alexander the Great and setting up the Roman Empire. It's got nothing to do with the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago. This is certainly about the time of the end, because it's happening right in front of your eyes, right now. Now see if you can agree with me who this notable horn of the goat power is. I'm going to verse 23. In the latter part of their reign, when rebels have become completely wicked, a stern-faced king, a master of intrigue, will arise. This is the little horn that comes out of the four horns. He will become very strong, but not by his own power. He will cause astounding devastation and will succeed in whatever he does. And he will destroy the mighty men and the nations of the holy people. Because of his cunning, he will cause deceit to prosper, and he will grow proud in his heart. He will destroy many in peace. So there's no wars here. And when they feel secure, he will destroy many and take his stand against the master of masters. He will be broken, but not broken by human hand. Now, if this representation happens to be broken, but not broken by a human hand, then who breaks him? Who puts a stop to this? Who do you think puts a stop to this? Because it goes on to say, the vision of the evenings and the mornings that has been given to you is true, seal it up, for again the vision concerns the future, the distant future, the last days. Now when we're looking at the notable horn of the goat power, that person is the first king. Now who, for the first time in history, was elected to be the chairman over the United Nations and NATO? Who was it? Barack Obama. So we've got a man there who was elected to be the top man over all the nations of the earth, and he's the President of the United States of America. And if that doesn't fit as the first king, well, I don't know what. He certainly fits a lot better as the first king than Alexander the Great, when he wasn't the first king. And he certainly fits as the first king because he is in the last days, and he is now part of the New World Order. He's part of the people that are dividing the world up into four divisions and to four unions. They already have the EU, European Union. We've already got Australia nominated to be in the Australia-Pacific, that's Asian Union. And of course, we already know that Mexico, Canada and USA will join together to form the North American Union. They've already got the currency, the Amero, to do that. So we're getting very close to when they are going to crash the dollar. Already Argentina has been sent broke, and who went in there to collect the money and take over everything in the industry? The IMF. Who put the policies into the new government? The IMF. Who is in the IMF? Well, you haven't got much difference between the IMF, the CFR and the Trilateral Commission. And these people now run Argentina. Now, we've got Greece, it's gone bankrupt. And again, who is looking after the policy there, and who is taking the money, and who is giving them the stimulus money? IMF. And we've got the same thing about to happen in Portugal, in Spain, Italy, and they say England. Well, you don't have to be real smart to realise that this is part of the play that they have to do, get every government into debt, convert every government into a republic, because they can't take over something that has to have people elected for referendums to change anything. They want they don't want referendums. They don't want to have to go to the people for any changes. And if the government has been converted into a republic, then it's easy for them to do. But the first thing they've got to do is to get the government to go bankrupt. And that's exactly what they're doing right across the world right now. Money. And now what we've just shown you in Daniel chapter 8 also will show you in Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7 lines up with the rest of the prophecies in the Bible, and at the end of all of these prophecies it goes to show you something, and that is that the divine creator of this earth, Yahweh, puts a stop to it all. That's right, it is Yahweh that puts a stop to it all. And I will give you some more text to show you exactly what he says he will do. Traditional teaching by both the Jews and the Christian people have kept people in the dark about exactly what's going to go on in the